It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. All right, so we got the vice presidential debate to talk about. You got any good fly jokes? Oh, that was fun, wasn't it? Thank goodness for the unexpected. Shoo fly, don't bother me. Shoo fly, don't bother me. Lots of easy jokes. Right at the top of the list, of course, being all the references to what flies typically love to land on, what they're attracted to. That and the pink eye. Oh, Lord, that was painful to watch. Yeah, Pence's left eye was just kind of raging. And, of course, everybody pointing out, that's a symptom of COVID, man. We all said, well, I said anyway, especially, just last night, just before the debate, it was revealed that an internal memo discovered by reporters just about half hour, 20 minutes before the debate started, I saw this headline that up to 34 people around Trump have tested positive. It was a leaked FEMA report. Somebody in the press got hold of it. 34 White House staffers and contacts have been infected with COVID-19 in recent days, according to an internal FEMA memo. ABC News reported on Thursday night. The document suggests the true scale of the White House outbreak, which was first revealed last week when advisor Hope Hicks tested positive. Yeah, I saw this news, half hour before the debate, and said to myself and anybody else who would listen, that bobblehead Mike Pence needed to get his fat ass back home and do this debate via Zoom or Skype or GoToMeeting or whatever you got set up on your laptop there with you and mother safely at home. Mike Pence has no business being out in public. He should be quarantined. And there he is in a closed room, no masks, other people, aerosols floating around, with the damn pink eye. It shouldn't have happened. Bobblehead Mike Pence is probably positive for COVID. It's crazy the way we're being so cavalier about this thing. The minute the Orange Menace and Hope Hicks and then this cascade of positive cases were announced, Bobblehead Mike should have quarantined for 14 days. That's all there is to it. This is crazy. So I just hope he didn't transmit it to anybody last night. It should have been virtual. And speaking of virtual debates, from the AP this morning, President Donald vowed Thursday not to participate in next week's debate with Democratic nominee Joe Biden after organizers announced it will take place virtually because of the president's diagnosis of COVID-19. So, on Fox News this morning, he said, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go virtual. So now we don't know if it's going to happen or not. From the Biden campaign, Vice President Biden looks forward to speaking directly to the American people, Deputy Campaign Manager Kate Bedingfield said in a statement. The announcement from the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates cited a need to protect the health and safety of all involved with the second presidential debate. Yeah, it's just a no-brainer. I don't care if you're jacked up on steroids and you feel better than you have in 20 years. You're high, man. Do you remember your first experience at being high on drugs? Or seeing a friend having their first experience? He has no idea what's going on right now in his body and in his brain. So anyway, okay, we'll see what happens there, whether or not we're going to have a debate at all next week. And breaking news, the Pence fly has now tested positive for COVID-19. That was my little joke. I try to do what I can. All right. The vice presidential debate. All right, last night. You know what? Let's start with a fact check. Let's go to the AP fact check and see what needs to be said here. Let's see. On the economy, Bobblehead Mike said that we won the trade war versus China. The China tariffs, that was not a win for the U.S. And they go into some details there. Bobblehead Mike also said that the Rose Garden event for handmaiden Coney Barrett was an outdoor event. Well, there was quite a lot happening indoors, and there were plenty of photographs we had of the indoor reception, so there was that. Plus, being outdoors doesn't guarantee you anything, especially if you're seated next to someone for an hour and you're leaning in and having conversations and you're all hugging and kissing each other. The outdoors doesn't guarantee you safety. Another fact check, if you saw this, they spent an awful lot of time on fracking. And simply put, Harris herself has supported a ban on fracking in the past. Biden has not. So Pence was wrong about that. He kept saying over and over and over, oh my God, he was committed to that Biden would ban fracking. Of course he should. We want him to, but he's not going to do it. He never said he's going to do it. On health care, Bobblehead Mike said, President and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for all Americans. That's hilarious. No. Fact check, there is no plan. There's no plan at all. They've been saying they have a plan for 3 years, for 4 years, for 5 years, ever since he came down the escalator. He said they had a plan, but they don't. The Republicans haven't had a health care plan since Nixon. And he signed that little bogus presidential memo about pre-existing conditions that means absolutely nothing. It's just his fat Sharpie signature on a blank piece of paper, basically. So that meant nothing. All right, so there's that. Oh, this was infuriating. He must have said it 5 times. Bobblehead Mike said that the president suspended all travel from China. That's just simply not true. As the AP points out, the order did not suspend all travel from China. He restricted it. Also, Biden never branded the decision as xenophobic. That's another one of the little lies they've constructed and hammered and hammered and hammered. They just took some quotes out of context. Yes, Joe Biden has accused the Orange Menace of being xenophobic, but it wasn't in direct relation to this partial ban. So there's the AP fact check on that, in case you were curious. Oh, Russia. Pence went full Orange Menace on this, just repeating these lies about how Obama and Biden and Hillary Clinton spied on the Orange Menace campaign, all of that. How the Mueller report was partisan, and he just went full tinfoil hat on that. Of course, in his very calm, furrowed brow manner, but just as ridiculous as when the Orange Menace says it. None of that was true. None of that. Not even close to having any tiny bit of truth. Mueller found no collusion, all of that stuff. All of these talking points, born out of bootlicker Bill Barr's 4-page summary of lies regarding the Mueller report, and then metastasized since then into this ridiculous lie-filled screed about how corrupt that whole thing was. Yeah, he leaned into that very heavily. Same thing. He's just really on the topic of mail-in ballots and voter fraud and all of that. Yeah, it's why we call him Bobblehead Mike. Anything that the Orange Menace has spewed over recent several months, Bobblehead Mike was just bobbing his head up and down. Yep. Massive opportunity for voter fraud. Of course, all of it ridiculous. All of it fact-checked here by the AP. So anyway, just a few of the fact checks. All right, well, okay. Susan Page, the USA Today. She's a very good writer. I've enjoyed Susan Page for a long time. She's a good writer. She's a good opinion writer. She's a talking head. You'll see her on panels occasionally, and she does a very good job at that. Why in the world was she chosen for this job? She had to be the worst moderator of a debate I've seen in modern history. She was just terrible. Now, her questions were very good, and that's an important part of the job. It's up to the moderator to construct the line of questioning for the night and to write those questions. And she did that very well. But does she have any experience? I've never once in my life seen her as a host or a moderator on these talking head shows that she'll do. No, she's just one of the talkers. And she just screwed up royally. So that's a shame. Commission on Debates, get your act together. Get Judge Judy up there, somebody who's going to knock some heads around. You got to have somebody who can do this on the fly, can handle the responsibilities of that live event. I got my stopwatch out. I was timing Bobblehead Mike. He blew past his 2-minute limit every single time. The shortest length I timed was, I think, 11 seconds. And the longest was over 30. And he averaged, it was usually around 25, between 20 and 25 on average. But once or twice, he blew past the 30-second mark. While she just keeps saying, thank you, thank you, Vice President. Thank you, Mr. Vice. Thank you, Vice. And I counted that too. Had a good time last night. That averaged, let's see, at least 5. She would have to say, thank you, Mr. Thank you, at least 5 times. And I counted up to 8 on one occasion. It was 5, 6, 7, and once it was 8. As he just continued to mansplain over her. If you've heard any reporting yet about the debate, I guess the most defining characteristic of the night is that Bobblehead Mike did not answer the questions that were asked. Didn't even try to disguise it. You know, that's an old politician's trick. It's been around forever. That you acknowledge the question and you sort of deftly pivot to your own talking points. We've seen that forever and ever. He didn't even make an effort to pivot. He just literally ignored the question and went on to say whatever he wanted. Or he'd come right out and say, well, I appreciate your question, but I'm going to talk about this instead. It's like, I'm the man in the room with these 2 lowly women. I need to mansplain. I need to take over. Oh my God, it was annoying. Now, to be fair, Kamala Harris also did not answer a couple of questions. Neither one of them wanted to touch abortion very much, except in the very general terms. I support a woman's right to choose, and I respect the sanctity of life, you know. They didn't want to get into that. Susan Page asked them very early in the debate, I think it was just the second line of questioning, about both presidential candidates are quite old. Have you had the conversation with them about possible transfer of power? Neither one of them wanted to touch that at all. So there were a couple times when Harris also didn't answer, but it was pretty much Bobblehead Mike's MO throughout the night. And there were a couple of times when it was so obvious. Susan Page went out of her way to say, be specific. Specifically, how will pre-existing conditions be protected? And how will health care be affordable regarding the so-called plan from the current administration? He went nowhere near an answer. His answer became about how the Democrats want legal abortion right up to the date of birth and how the Democrats want to pack the court. Both points completely unrelated to the question asked and grossly exaggerated or just blatantly untrue statements. And so in this answer, in this so-called answer, I found this hilarious. In this so-called answer, he turns to Kamala Harris and says, are you going to pack the court? Answer the question. Are you going to pack the court? Well, of course, when it comes time for Kamala Harris to speak, She's not going to take that bait. She's not going to be bullied. So, of course, she doesn't really address that issue. It's not worth addressing. It's a ridiculous sideshow. So, after very openly refusing to answer several questions from the moderator, he had the chutzpah to say, I want to point out to the American people that she never answered the question, meaning his question about court backing. That takes some nerve that only Mike Pence has. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, Pence demanding that Harris answer his own personal questions when he won't even answer the moderators is gross and exemplary of the gender dynamics so many women have to deal with at work. Yeah, AOC tweeted that. Yeah, that was the theme of the night was his white male privilege just all over the place. And speaking of white male privilege, Martin Saunders points out in a tweet, I hope that it is obvious to everybody that when asked about race, Trump and Pence both chose to pivot to violence and looting, essential fear-mongering racism. Yep, that's exactly what happened on both occasions, last week and last night. When the subject of race came up, they immediately equated that with violence and looting. Bobblehead Mike's racism and misogyny are every bit as deep and real as the racism and misogyny from the Orange Menace. He just has a very different way of expressing it. It's very calm, furrows that brow. Oh, that brow is just permanently furrowed. Tilts the head a little bit, you know, the way he does. This is an evil dude, man. Evil dude. I was happy that Susan Page included climate change, not only as just a single question, but a whole segment, a series of questions, and that was good. Again, her questions were very good. Her role as cop, though, which is an important role in a live debate, she booted that, man. But her questions were good, and she asked about climate change. I'm sure I don't have to tell you. You know, we love our environment. But jobs and any short, cursory, honest look at the environmental record of this administration. Rampant deregulation. Opening up public lands for drilling. And, of course, the whole fracking debate. And not to forget that Andrew Wheeler, oh, Lord, Andrew Wheeler heads the Environmental Protection Agency. Yeah, the head of the EPA is a climate crisis denier. So Bobblehead Mike, all he's got this kind of 1950s attitude. Oh, we love our beautiful environment. But jobs, but corporate profits. Well, let's see here. I invited friends and followers last night to share the experience. I recommend that. It's really nice to just open up a thread and invite people to join you on the couch. So just some comments. Furrow that brow, Mike. Yeah, he's got that look just down pat. Amazing how smoothly this administration lies, like butter. Yeah, it's really creepy and disconcerting to watch Mike Pence lie. We're also used to hearing and seeing the style of the Orange Menace, with his big sort of weird Hitler-Mussolini style of shouting his lies. To see those exact same lies slither out of the mouth of this oily, pasty, pink-eyed zealot is just weird and dystopian. Ugh. Oh, the phrase of the night, which turned into a GIF immediately. I'm speaking. Kamala Harris. Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. It was interesting because very early in the debate, it may have been Kamala Harris's first answer or second, but it was very early. He tried to pull the whole just start talking routine, as recommended by Chris, I'm in the hospital with COVID Christie, to the Orange Menace. He's the one who coached him. I just keep interrupting. And he tried it early, and once with some success. He actually took over her 2 minutes for about 30 seconds. And that happened exactly once. Kamala gave him just dagger eyes. One of many, and this is another headline you're seeing today. Her expressions. You can bet your last dollar that Maya Rudolph on Saturday Night Live is going to be all over that. Kamala's many and varied expressions of disdain, of disbelief, often flashing that big old smile, laughing at him, just openly laughing at him. It was a sight to behold. If you didn't see it, I'm sure, I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure you can find a montage of her many expressions. So again, his interruption ploy happened exactly once. And she said, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Oh, here's a note that I had last night. When Pence was talking about the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, and he had the nerve to talk about how it's helping farmers. Hey, man, I live in Wisconsin. I live in the dairy state. Dairy farms are closing at a record pace. To the extent that some of them have been able to survive this period is only because of the increased subsidies they've got from the Orange Menace. So basically, he's just paying them off. Yeah, USMCA is just a watered-down version of NAFTA. I am not an expert in this area, but go ahead and read the experts. Read unbiased experts on comparing USMCA and NAFTA. This has not been a landmark economy-saving policy by any stretch. And dairy farms are still closing at a record pace. Yeah, several people in the thread pointed out that Kamala Harris, there's not really much comparison. When you look at the 4 people at the top of the ticket, the Orange Menace, Bobblehead Mike, Joe, and Kamala, there's only really one person out of those 4 who's qualified to be president, as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of people on my thread agreed. Yeah, Kamala Harris, you don't have to, and I don't agree with her on every single policy issue. She's pretty liberal, as you know, relative to other people in Washington, which isn't saying much. But just as far as competence, intellect, obvious ability, it's not even close. It's just not even close. Of those 4 people, she is in her own league. Yeah, we pointed out, a few of us pointed out in the thread that he really did come right out and say, well, thank you for your question, but I'm going to talk about this instead. And that's not even paraphrasing. That's literally what he said. Well, thank you for your question, but I need to talk about X. He was such a character out of Mad Men. Yeah, the thread picked up when the topic came around to Breonna Taylor and systemic racism. Yeah, he went full 50s black and white dad on this one, refusing to entertain the notion of any kind of systemic racism. And as we mentioned earlier, immediately turning to the so-called violence of so-called rioters, of so-called, equating protests with riots. When we know, report after report, just a big one recently, just last week, where the vast, vast majority, 95% of protesters, 100% peaceful. And as we're able to sort out the facts of the matter over the past several months here, outside agitators creating the violence, and not just any outside agitators, right-wing, white supremacist agitators. And still, Bobblehead Mike and the Orange Menace perpetuate this lie that Black Lives Matter protesters are violent. They're shameless. Shameless. Yeah, of course he's got to give the little furrowed brow, tilted head, choke in the voice. Oh, our thoughts and prayers and love go to the families of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. But you know what? When you grieve for someone who's been murdered, probably better not to follow it with the word but. We're looking at the thread here from last night. Oh, then comes the fly on the head. Everybody just loved that. Oh, that was really great. Is that a fly? Yeah, a fly just landed on Pence's head with a little poop emoji. Oh. And right after the fly, oh my God. This was, for me anyway, this was the moment of the night. It may have gotten past you. But when Susan Page tried to stop him, tried to tell him his time was up, he looked her right in the eye. And I mean, just intense, steely-eyed, callous, privileged, mansplaining, looked her right in the eye and said, I really need to make this point. It was chilling. I mean, it was chilling. And she let him get away with it. She let him get away with it. He spoke for another at least 30, 45 seconds over his time after she told him to stop. I really need to make this point. Oh, and the look in his eyes, man, he's an evil dude. He is just an evil dude. But in the end, Kamala Harris, who I haven't spoken enough about. I've been speaking too much about Bobblehead Mike. Kamala Harris really did a very good job. She told him, I'm speaking, a few times, and it worked, and she shut him up. And she had a way of, I mean, obviously she did a lot of work on this. She did a lot of prep, and she had talking points that she really wanted to incorporate into the debate, regardless of what questions were asked, okay? Fair enough. Again, all politicians do that. But I was really impressed, and I mentioned this in the thread last night, how she was able to incorporate every single talking point. I don't think she left anything on the table. She left nothing in her binder. She unloaded all of it. But she did it within the context of directly answering questions. For the most part, yes, she avoided a couple of them, but for the most part, she answered questions and incorporated her talking points. She was a ninja. Kamala Harris was a ninja last night. And I don't have to be her greatest fan. In the lineup of Democratic candidates, she wasn't my first choice, or even my second, or maybe even my third. But this woman has skills. This woman has skills. So there you go. We'll keep you updated on the health of that fly after tested positive for COVID. And, okay. There it is. That's the log. This episode and all episodes can be found on your favorite podcast platform. By the way, if you search for it, use my name, Charles Purcell, because there are some other podcast titles that we've done over the years under that umbrella, Charles Purcell Presents. So when you search for the log, search Charles Purcell, and it'll come right up wherever you get your podcasts. All right, there you go. Talk to you tomorrow.